Good morning, Wise Tribe, and welcome to Anju Asks. Today we're at Incontact Counselling and Training, and we're talking about a very sensitive topic this morning. We're talking about deliberate self-harm and specifically cutting. And some of the topics that we'll be touching on are leaning towards non-suicidal self-injury. So I just want to let people know that it could be a trigger for some people. It is a sensitive topic, but it's a really important one. So I'm here today to talk with Fiona and Aarti. Thanks so much for joining us and talking to us about this. So maybe we can just start really at the top.
Yes.
What constitutes self-harm?
I think any kind of physical injury to yourself, which is deliberate, intentional, but to elevate emotional pain, is really the sort of basic 101 of self-harm or self-injury.
So why, it's a really big question,
Yes.
but why do we think that young people in particular, a lot of people in our audience are mums, of children of all ages, will see a lot of different manifestations of anxiety, but self-harm is quite extreme. Why do children go there to that extreme?
Well, they feel they have no other way of alleviating the emotional sort of feelings that they're dealing with. And maybe around them also they have, they watch other people what they're doing. They're in the settings with the same peers, and this is one way that unfortunately tends to be a way out for them, and it gives them that relief from that intense emotion that they actually don't want to feel. Yes, and that's the big thing. And
so with cutting, is it that young people might try other things first? Is there a gateway that like a series of behaviors? Because cutting, it's as a parent, it's really worrying. It's
Sure.
Do you think there are other things that as a precursor, or is it just something that can just come out of the blue?
Yeah, I mean, I think they would, children probably or teenagers would find other means of indulging in risky behaviors, right?
Right.
It may not be the first sort of farm, it could be the other farms that they're indulging in,
Yes.
but it also could be the first farm. So there's no rule book on this one, right? And they could go straight into cutting, or they pick that up from peers or other friends, and they found this as a tool to elevate their pain, So it may or may not be the first tool, but we don't know about that. There are enough statistics on that one.
It would depend on the child as well, right? Every child has different ways of coping with things, right? And maybe also what they've learned from families, different way how they cope within that.
So is there a specific sort of gender or age group that are more susceptible or vulnerable to this behavior?
I think we've seen it more rampantly with girls, predominantly with girls, but I'm not sure, is it because there's not enough reporting on boys, or because we've not found enough statistics on boys, or maybe boys are indulging and they're not coming out because there's more shame associated with cutting, and girls normalize this a little bit more, and they kind of find their tribe with cutting, so it could be more of that.
If you talk to any of the girls, especially the clients we see, they tell you about their friends, this is normal, they'll all, even for some people they'll show you, the different parts, right?
So it's a trend?
It can be.
Wow.
At times. This is scary, right? This is scary for parents, right? Because parents are thinking, what can I do, right? But we're not saying that it becomes normalized, we're just saying that when they're within their group of peers and it is happening a lot and they see this, well, it becomes almost something that is, you're cutting, she's cutting, that's what we're sort of dealing with.
It becomes normal to try and see, as it was perhaps with our generation to try a cigarette.
Exactly. It's something that we want, our teenagers, their role is to push boundaries, parents' role is to put in boundaries, right? They're always going to try things. We can't stop that, right? But we'd hope we'd have them in a place where they'd have enough tools to be able to do different, to alleviate their pain in different ways.
And also because this mental health is come to the sort of more
Yeah.
foreground, and people are talking about it, kids are aware. So they share that they're feeling depressed or sad, and then they all talk about it together, and then they find tools to sort of elevate that pain.
Yes.
Which probably in our generation we were not talking about it as much.
Absolutely.
So we didn't need as many tools, or we had more hidden tools that, you know.
Yeah,
So I think there's more evolution in mental health, and then obviously there comes healthy and not so healthy
Yes.
ways of coping with it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, we didn't even have a vocab to how to
Yes.
express
Yes.
Or
ourselves.
did we,
Yeah.
even in a school setting, most of our kids would know to go to a school counsellor if they needed, right? And they
Yes.
would know somewhere to go,
Mhm.
but, you know, they have that.
So we also have more healthy ways of coping.
Yes.
So we also
Yes.
have rampantly come out with more unhealthy ways of coping.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit more deeply into the psychology of why young people do it. What do they feel, and what are they getting from it that they're not getting from any other way of dealing with it?
I think there's certain euphoria associated with cutting, right? When you feel it's, I associate cutting with some sort of panic, right? You're feeling panicky, and there's also physiological response, because you may not see it as obviously as a panic attack, but you're feeling it in your body. There are thoughts that you're sort of ruminating about yourself. I'm not good enough. I don't look good. I'm not pretty enough. You know, all those kind of thoughts that you know, at that sort of age group would I typically have. And you want to elevate that, so you cut so that you feel the euphoria. So it's kind of a distraction tool,
Right.
you know. And so that's predominantly the reason. But of course, then we can define the reasons between psychological, which is self-worth and not having enough attachment issues, you know, sort of attachment issues with family of origin, bullying, you know, sort of body image, which is a big one at this stage.
Yes.
Because if you look at the age group, it's 13 to 16, and at this stage where you start finding identity, your competence, and in different areas, and how attractive you look to how good you are academically, right? So that all of that comes into
And
play.
how much you belong in that group, right?
Yes.
You're talking about being in the popular group, wanting to belong, right?
Yes.
Our kids have to deal with that on a daily basis.
Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes, as Aarti said, it's so difficult to do that, and they start doing the cutting.
Yeah.
That's fine when it starts, right?
Yes.
But then it doesn't give them the same sort of payment back, so they have to start again. So we've seen almost like taking a drink of something, then you have to increase it.
Your
You have to make a bit more.
tolerance.
Yeah, and that's when we have to get more worried as to there is more probability that they can really do some injury to themselves.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's typically the first thing that we would you know, ask our clients,
Mm.
like, where are you cutting yourself, you know, because it speaks volumes when you're cutting yourself,
Right.
you know, around the wrist area and the forearm areas. You want to ask for help, right?
Right.
You want to be seen versus thighs and stomach. You don't want to be
Behind the
seen.
legs,
There's shame.
there's a lot of
You know,
places.
So
that
it's
are
also
cut.
where you cut,
Yeah.
which can also be important and significant in this whole sort of psychological aspect.
And that's why sometimes parents may not even realize that their child is cutting, right? So if you see it, at least when we see kids coming in and they can show you, right? But what happens if your child is doing it somewhere that they are constantly, you know, wearing a long
Covered up.
It's covered up, right?
Absolutely.
And sometimes, you know, we were saying they may not want to tell you that. Why?
Yes.
Because they feel that, you know, you're coping really well. Because as parents, we often should give that impression that we can cope with anything.
Yes.
You know, and so I
Yeah,
think
you
that's
don't want to show that
No.
you know, you're
No.
cracking as a
Exactly.
parent,
And
right? You're
as
out of
parents today,
control.
we have a lot of issues to deal with, right?
Yes.
Not only are maybe we're working, we've got the family to run, and we've got our kids,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of stuff coming up, and maybe we're just moving on, right? And
Yes.
perhaps sometimes that can be a barrier as well, right?
Yes.
Unknowing to us, right? And it's difficult.
Yeah, so that would come under the psychological, you know, you imitate
Yeah.
hidden ways of expressing pain because you've not learned
How
the,
to.
the more constructive expressions, right? So the psychological aspects, and then we also talk about the fact that this is happening at the time where you're sort of having puberty.
Yeah.
So we look at the hormones, and hormones are important for mood regulation and impulse control. And the brain is growing, right, at that stage.
Yes.
And the neurobiological aspect of it, that there's the frontal cortex is not developed, and the impulse controls are still, that's the part which deciphers your ability to see bad versus good. So all that is not developed, you know.
Which isn't a bad thing, right? This is, you know, Dr. Dan Siegel, we were saying, you know, the specialist in brain sort of neurology says, this is a good time, right? Parents shouldn't be fearful of these changes their kids are going through, right?
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so important that we psychoeducate ourselves, that we understand tools, and that we're able to understand this is going to happen, right? They don't know, they don't have that capacity. A 16-year-old brain is only 80% developed. A boy at 25, they say then the brain is fully developed.
At
right?
25 for boys. Wow,
That's the
a lot.
research, right? I'm not making this up. So
They're lagging behind a little
yes,
bit.
right. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then if you start looking at that and
Yeah.
taking all that on board, right?
Yes.
And we see these beautiful kids that we have, and they present often so much more mature, so much more able to cope and
Yeah,
deal with
Absolutely.
things. And they don't have the tools,
Yeah.
perhaps,
Yes.
or the capacity,
Yes.
because they're not supposed to be there.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So as parents,
Yeah.
it is our duty to look out for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are the warning signs that we should be looking out for? You mentioned
Mm.
to look out for cuts in places that aren't so obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Difficult if they're a little
It
bit
is
older
difficult,
and
yeah.
you're not helping them shower and
And
And they don't want
and
to
things
talk
like
to you,
that.
and they're closing the door, right? So we're
Yes.
just saying some of these signs may indicate, they may not necessarily, but perhaps they become more withdrawn.
Yeah.
Perhaps they're more moody.
Yes.
Perhaps you see them, you know, doing things, you know, that they don't normally do. They don't want to go out with their friends. They're staying in their room. They're wearing different clothes. There's a
Yeah.
shift, right? As we were talking about that
Yeah.
gut instinct. There's something
Right.
not right.
Yeah.
Okay, and now you may go to your child and they go, everything is fine, right? But as a mum or as a dad, sometimes you just have to hold it a little bit and stick with your gut instinct.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one, you know, in
Yeah.
our societies we don't talk enough about is the gut instinct.
Yeah.
And as parents, as a natural instinct that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beyond the warning signs that we can sort of talk about. Trust your gut instinct. This is a very important form of
Yeah.
intelligence, the gut instinct.
Yeah.
You know, we talk a lot about cognitive intelligence, emotional intelligence. We don't talk about the gut, natural
Yeah.
instinct of intelligence, you know.
Right.
So trust it.
Mm.
Isolation is a big one, like Fiona
Yes.
pointed out, just to sort of parallel talk about what warning signs.
Yeah.
Isolation and not, I think negative changes of any kind,
Yeah.
right? So you've got to just look out on those ones.
It's difficult though, isn't it? At that age, it's a very fine line. So I think what you're saying about that gut instinct
Yeah.
is really important.
Yes.
You know your
Yeah.
child, and
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
they're happy and true to the core of
Yeah.
themselves,
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
and when that shifts,
Yeah.
it's important
Yeah.
to have a conversation. So,
Hmm.
what would you do? How would you approach this if you think your
Yeah.
child is cutting? I mean, I can't even
Sometimes you
imagine.
can imagine, yeah,
the
that's it,
reaction.
right? I think first of all we need the parent to be calm.
I think what's
Right.
the thing, just to,
Yeah.
what Fiona said, how not to approach
Yes,
it, right?
possibly.
Is the important
Yes,
one.
right. That's-
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because often what we do when we feel, oh my gosh, my child is in danger, right? And
Yes.
I feel responsible. I'm going to go in there, right? And I'm not going to be perhaps able
Yeah.
to listen to them.
Yes.
And I'm going to make assumptions, and I'm
Yeah.
going to want them to tell me, and that is probably the last place they want to go. So
Yeah.
we have to sort of self-regulate ourselves,
Ah.
right? Maybe I need support before I can go there, right? Maybe I need to somehow calm myself down. Maybe I need to talk to somebody before I go in, right? Because what
Yes.
happens when I go in and they just say, there's nothing wrong with me, and they close the door and you're, so it's going to be a
Yes.
Yeah.
process, and it's not going to sometimes be an easy process, right?
Yeah.
But you're going to open the door a little, you're going to try and sort of
Yeah.
ask, you know, is everything going okay? What's happening? You might get the door closed, but you're going to be constantly there, and
Yes.
you're going to be, and school is another place I think
Yeah.
that you can also tune in. Is something going on there? Because we don't have them 24/7, right?
Absolutely.
We only see
Yeah.
them in pockets. So maybe, you know, if you've got a good connection with one of the teachers, do you see anything
Yeah.
that's happening there? There's,
You're not really the only one.
Yeah.
But yes, you're the
Mm.
primary one, the
The
most
primary
significant one, because
Yes,
you are the
yeah.
parent.
Mm.
Like I say to, you know, and I'm a mom too, we get angry, and anger is directly proportional to the fear that we are feeling, right? So fear and anger are related, and there's naturally a lot of fear with seeing a child cut yourself, right? Himself. And so I think we need to manage and mitigate that
Yeah.
fear before we have that conversation.
And the guilt
and
that
the
parents
guilt,
will
the
have.
shame,
What did I do
yes.
wrong?
Yes.
Right? Because the child is part
Yeah.
of me, and I feel that then I've done something wrong,
Yes.
right? And a lot of the time we may not, right? Or maybe we have not been in the best place that we could be for our kids,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then we can't go to them with that burden. We need to be able to,
Yeah.
you know, sort of regulate ourselves and then work with our child.
Because it's not about you, right?
No.
The important point is
Yeah.
it's not about you, so let's not make it about you, and let's really make it about the child.
Yeah.
So create a conducive environment, ask the most empathetic questions,
Mm.
do not punish the child
Yes.
for
doing
for
this,
cutting,
yeah.
that's very important. You create shame, which is
Yeah.
not what we want.
Make them feel bad.
Yeah, make them feel, create a systemic change, be reflective. I think when teenagers come at that stage, or even little
They're
kids,
just,
even younger, we are very conscious of the fact that kids are not the problem,
Yeah.
right? It's a systemic change that we want to bring. So let's look
Work
into
with
the
the
whole
family.
family unit, look at the school
Right.
systems.
Yeah.
It takes all of us, right?
So I was
Take
going to
some of
ask
it.
that,
Yeah.
if perhaps there's one child in the family that is experiencing this, how do you deal with this as a family? Do you sit down and have a family conference and chat about it with the siblings and say, hey, this is going on and let's all
I
be
think
open?
they probably all know, right? Because I
Right.
think if siblings are usually there's stuff going on. I have 3 teenagers, right? Well, they're probably a little older, but they'd always have an idea of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Because I'd say something,
Yeah.
and go, and maybe I'm the last to find out, right? That's sort of normal, right? But
Yeah.
you always have a link in some way, right?
Yeah.
First of all, you have to be comfortable that the child is comfortable with this, right?
Yeah, that's a
You
good
can't
point.
go out and sort of tell everyone. So they have to be comfortable, then you have to be, and then it's a bit like, well, it would depend. Do you normally have family chats? I always think with young kids, it's a great time to start family meetings. How are we feeling? How was your week?
Yeah.
Very hard to introduce that with teenagers when it hasn't been happening.
And at that vulnerable stage when
Yes.
they're cutting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you've got to
Right.
take it slow. You don't
You
want to
really
be
go
shocked
slow.
with the change,
So we're
right?
all sitting around today in happy family, and they're all like, "Oh." So you've got to do this in a very gentle way, and you also have to, it depends. Every family's different, right? I can't say what works in my family will work in another family. If we've never sat down as a family, this might be sort of, maybe at a meal we're sitting down, we might say, well, how was everybody's week? And maybe I didn't realize that some of us aren't doing so well, whatever way, but you have to do it gently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also the agency for that
Yeah.
that discussion of who needs to be
No.
disclosed this
Yeah.
to, right? And who
Yeah.
else can be involved needs to be with the child.
Yes.
Right? And so you've got to really empower the child by asking questions, what do you want?
Yeah.
Who else can we tell, right?
Yes.
Can we tell your brother or your sister? Are you comfortable? Can we all talk about it together? So let the agency be with the child,
Yeah.
the adolescent or the young adult.
Yes, bringing it back to them.
Yeah, because you don't want them. They're feeling isolated as it is,
Yeah.
right? We don't want to make it even harder
Yeah.
on them. Our idea is to bridge that, right? To help them, to get them help, get them support, and everybody benefits. Okay.
So mentioning that help and support,
Yes.
for parents
Yeah.
and for children and
Yes.
young people,
Yeah.
what support and what mechanisms are there out there? What should people be doing?
Yeah. Well, I think for young people, right? Number one, you can start at the school, right? Perhaps there's a counsellor that you can go there,
Yes.
right? A lot of kids go, no, they don't like going to see the counsellor or whatever, right? But you talk to them then, perhaps getting them somebody outside of the school, right? That they can go to. And somebody, I think, that gives support not only to the child, but to the parents as well. And I think often, because it brings up, it triggers in someone,
Yeah,
maybe me as a
it does.
mom, oh my gosh, my ability to mother, have I done something wrong, whatever.
Yeah.
So I need to also help regulate myself, right? And maybe then perhaps fathers may find this very difficult as well,
Yes.
right? They haven't been around maybe as much, maybe there's, so it's going to sort of have its trickle effect on a lot of the family.
Yeah.
But it's natural. I think if we can normalize that with parents and say, this is very normal, this happens to a lot of families, now the choice is, it's what do we do with
Yes.
it? Yeah. Not to
I
have
call
that
it also
shame.
the repair effect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we do things wrong.
Yeah.
I've done so many things as a parent wrong, right? I wish I could change them. But it's about repairing it, right? And being reflective of it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the conversation also when you just found out and if you did it wrong because you let the fear take over you, then it's important to go and repair it, right? And that's the key critical thing we as parents need to understand, that we can repair. We also have the agency to repair things for our child and for ourselves and how we did it. And so that's another important one. But you said how we can sort of mitigate this is also learning some responses during that panic time. The time when you're ruminating those negative thoughts. So coming up with alternative tools as a discussion, maybe with a therapist, maybe with your family. There lots of breathing, mindfulness is a big one, right?
Yes. Positive behaviours.
Positive behaviour.
I mean,
distract you
catch
from.
them,
Yeah.
And I think our kids have a lot more, because when you ask them, when they come in here as clients, you'd say, what do you do? Well, these things help me. right?
Right.
But what often happens is they get so
Yeah.
caught up in the whole feeling they forget, right?
Yeah.
And I often say to them, we get them to check in, use your phone to help you, right? Because they use their phone, right? You can put things on the phone screen.
Yes.
What are the things I
Yeah.
can do, right? I can, for some people, they like to suck an ice cube. It helps to calm them down.
Yes.
Right.
Somebody else to do some tapping. We do the
Yes.
butterfly
Yeah,
tapping
yeah,
and different
yeah.
things, right? Tap your feet, right?
Yeah.
Breathing, right?
Breathing
It
is a
was
big
meant
one.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Breathing, because I think we don't realize that even with self-harming or self-injuring behaviors, you are panicking,
Yes.
right? And so your breath is
Right.
not in sync.
Yeah.
So at that point, coming up with a countdown, count from
Yeah.
10 to close your eyes, count yourself down, all those things.
Yeah.
Because there's scientific research that when you contain your breathing, and breathing is really important, it clears out your flooding that's happening.
Right.
Yes.
So that's what we want to do, right? At that point,
Bring
you're
down
flooding.
more
We call it
physiology.
flooding.
Yeah.
And physiologically, we want to control that. So there's a physiological control that needs to happen at that time. So one part of it is at that time when you're feeling that urge to cut yourself again, what can you do?
Yes.
What are alternative tools?
Yes.
And then of course the deeper aspects of what is causing
Yes.
it
That's the
and
big
working with the
thing.
root,
Yeah.
root
What
roots
is
of
causing
it, right?
Yeah. And that's
Yes, so they go hand in hand.
Hand in
It's
hand,
with
yes.
that behaviour
Yeah.
in the moment
Yeah.
and how to help
how do I
them.
do that? But what is causing it?
Yes,
What's
of
underneath
course.
there?
Yeah, and how to get that.
And that takes time, right? And often what we find with kids, if we don't, as we said, if they don't get that help now, further down the line, we even had adults in our practice in their 30s and their 40s, and they're still suffering and they're still doing the same things, right? And I think now more than ever, as Aarti saying with mental health and people understanding, we see a lot more people coming now at a later stage. But we'd like to think that our kids would have those tools now, right? Because
Yes.
they're going through a difficult time. They're going to go into university.
Yes.
For a lot of us, they're going to be somewhere else. We'd like to
Yes.
think that they have that capacity now when they leave us
Yes.
to be able to look. It's
Yeah.
never going to be perfect,
Yeah.
but that they can call us, they can tell us, and that they have some tools.
Yes. So it is really important to deal with that
Yes.
as
Yeah.
early as possible.
Yeah.
So that
Yes.
the root cause and
Yeah.
try and address that.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't emerge
Yeah.
or
Later in your
continue
Yes.
later.
Yeah.
It's almost like a
Trauma-
learned
trauma will-
response.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a learned response to
Mm.
manage pain. And you can carry that learned response. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just only in that age band, right? We
Mm.
see a lot of 35, 40-year-olds
Yeah.
who are still cutting themselves because they haven't found alternative ways of managing that stress
Yeah.
or that pain, like we said. And like I say, pain is
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah.
And we do want to get rid of that pain. So these are the things that need to be managed at that stage.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's really important, and I think that's a great place to end our
Mhm.
discussion today, actually,
Thank you.
because
Yeah. Mhm.
we've kind of addressed the behaviours and
Yes.
also the underlying causes, and
Yeah.
it's important to do both of those
Yes.
hand in
Yeah.
hand,
Yeah.
and as early as
Yeah,
possible, really.
And I think
So,
to say to parents that this is part of life today,
It
all right?
is.
But we can cope with it, right? But it is
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
We're all parents here. None of us want that, but then it's how we will approach that for our
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. Great. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you,
so
Anju.
much.
Yeah.
Lovely
Thank
to talk
you.
to you. Thanks.